Image Comics is booming right now, with a whole new superhero universe being shaped and created there by mastermind Kyle Higgins, with this universe being known as the Massiveverse. Welcome back, Nerd Squad, it's me, Amanda, but today I am dressed like Adam Eve, which is very fitting considering we are talking about an Image Comics property, and Adam Eve is also from Image Comics. What is your favorite Image comic? Is it Invincible? And who is your favorite character to come out of the Massiveverse/Radiant Black, the book that started it all? Number 10. Bibi Lopez Yang. Before we talk about Bibi, what is the Massiveverse? Let's answer that question for those that don't know. Well, it's the amazing superhero universe that started off with Kyle Higgins and Marcelo Costa's Radiant Black. From there, Kyle Higgins introduced other heroes into the series, and also introduced other creative teams into this world, giving characters that weren't necessarily Radiant Black related their own series and spin-offs as well, also jumping into a crossover event known as Supermassive, building a world known as the Massiveverse. While I don't believe Bibi has claimed her superhero name yet in the comics, it seems likely Bibiana will take the name of her own main series that she appears in, the Dead Lucky. But I don't want to call her the Dead Lucky yet because I'm not sure if she's committed to that name yet, although, I mean, it is the name of the series, so yeah. There are a lot of references to her feeling kind of like the incarnation of death in this series, starting back in issue number 1 on the first page basically of the comic. So it seems likely that this name is going to fit pretty well with her. Bibi is one of the latest heroes to be added to the Massiveverse. She is a veteran who served in the military in Afghanistan but came back from her time touring with PTSD, and the ability to control electrical currents. Throughout the course of her series thus far, Bibi must not only wrestle with her own internal struggles, but also come to terms with what is happening to her physically now that she has powers, and also what's going on around her, because there's a lot of stuff going on around her. Definitely a lot of technology trying to take over and stuff like that. Spooky spooks, because I feel like that's kind of real life. And friends, before I move on to this next spot, if you love what we do here at Top 10 Nerd, and if you love Image Comics, and if you love Radiant Black and the Massiveverse, please, please, please let us know by hitting that thumbs up button. It's a lot of love and it's only one little action that you need to take. Number 9. Rogue Sun. Rogue Sun is pretty cool. He's an anti-hero basically who kind of never wanted the power that he gets, and even his dad kind of seemed like an anti-hero. Rogue Sun in his own series starts off as a legacy hero basically. This version of the character is different from the one that we see in the Supermassive event, at least that's what it seemed like to me. He is Dylan Siegel, and his dad, Marcus, was the original Rogue Sun, who I believe is the one that did appear in the Supermassive event. However, Daniel's father, Marcus, has been murdered. Being estranged from his dad, Dylan is shocked to learn that the absentee father he's hated all these years was actually a superhero. Rogue Sun has one of my favorite character designs when it comes to the heroes of the Massiveverse. Through his power set, Dylan can communicate with his father, who's basically kind of like Ghost Dad, who also often talks to him even when he doesn't want him to, which is a lot because obviously Dylan has a really complicated relationship with his dad. Dylan as Rogue Sun seems to possess super strength, durability, flight, and of course fire-based powers. Because, you know, Rogue Sun, his whole suit, super fiery. Number 8. Inferno Girl Red. Cassia Costa is Inferno Girl Red. While she does not yet have her own series, she is one of the heroes I'm most looking forward to reading more about when she does get her own series, which is happening in 2023. Cassia did, however, appear in the Supermassive crossover event where she introduced herself to both Radiant Black and Rogue Sun. Cassia as Inferno Girl Red actually exists in the massive multiverse, I would say, because she hails from another dimension entirely, as opposed to Radiant Black and Rogue Sun, who I believe exist on the same Earth. She's a lot less angsty than Rogue Sun, but seems to have some similar abilities to both him and Radiant Black. It appears as though she has super strength, can fly and teleport, and is even capable of traveling interdimensionally. I mean, she needs like I believe like a crystal to do that, but it's possible. Number 7. 001. Or just 1. I don't know. 001. I would say that 001 might be more powerful than all of the Radiants, considering that it took a joint effort to defeat him that first time around. But that seems unfair considering, you know, they did manage to defeat him, so yeah. So we're gonna put him a bit lower. 001 initially acts as an antagonist and has come to Earth to seemingly retrieve the Radiants. He also claims that all of Earth will likely perish as a result of the Radiants being taken by the Earthlings, and offers them an ultimatum the first time around. I mean, they didn't really take the Radiants anyways, they just kind of accepted them, but their acceptance apparently is going to do this. The ultimatum that 001 gives them is they're either going to die at his hand and then surrender the Radiants, or they can delay their deaths and basically condemn the whole world to destruction. Really chipper dude all around. Number 6. Radiant Pink. Radiant Pink has one of my favorite all-time power sets and also one of my favorite all-time colors. She has the ability to teleport. Her name is Eva, and when she's not busy teleporting around the world and fighting alongside the fellow Radiants, she's a streamer, which I also love because hey, you know, I do that too. I do that both here on YouTube and on Twitch. I love streaming. Streaming is awesome. Eva can teleport long or short distances, but the only downside is that she can get tired out by using her powers and kind of needs to rest at times depending on how far and frequently she is teleported. Although, you know, the Radiants can all boost each other, which is pretty cool, so if she's super tired, she could just ask for a boost from somebody else. Radiant Pink will be getting her own solo limited series, which will be starting in December of 2022, so you might want to add that to your pull list. I know I'm going to be adding it. Number 5. Radiant Yellow. Radiant Yellow is Wendell George, who honestly, the more I learn about him, the more I feel like I really love him as a character. But hey, all of the characters in the Massiverse are kinda like that for me. So I guess that's, you know, not exclusive to him. Although I do find his power set to also be one of the most interesting ones of all of the Radiants. While the power sets for the Radiants in most cases appear to be a lot more straightforward, Wendell's powers as Radiant Yellow are more something you pick up on slowly over time. The more you get to know him, the more you get a better understanding of how his powers seem to work. They are far more complex and mysterious than the other Radiant's power sets. Wendell can in essence see into the future, but only his own future, and only his own future if he actually commits to making a choice. I mean, he can kind of see into the future in general, but it's like only he can affect that future. He can't see like if you make a different choice, what'll happen to the future. He can only see if he makes a different choice what'll happen, if that makes sense. Initially, when I saw him in the comics, I actually thought his powers were more related to light, based on the fact that he seemed to emit what I thought were like holograms or duplicates of himself and light blasts. But really, these holograms were likely more of a visual aid to indicate Wendell searching for possible paths that would lead to victory. At least that's how I interpret these moments now. However, that is the really amazing thing about Radiant Black. There's a lot of clues left for you, but nothing is straight up handed to you on a platter. There's a lot of room for you to read between the lines and interpret for yourself, which is really what I love about this whole world. Nothing is ever black and white. It's all very gray and interesting and intricate. Very cool. Number 4. Radiant Red. My favorite Radiant, hands down. I love Radiant Red. She is such an amazing and complex character. Though as I said, really all of the Radiants and characters in the Massiverse are that, the more you get to know them, which if you love complex characters, this is a whole universe for you that you need to check out. Radiant Red is Saitomi Son, and after bonding with her Radiant, she decided to use it to go on a crime spree. Although as we learn in her own series, which is titled Radiant Red, and in her dedicated issue of Radiant Black, which is issue number 6, which focuses pretty much solely on her, Saitomi has a reason for becoming a criminal. She's driven to do so due to an insane amount of debt that her husband has basically racked up due to his inability to quit gambling. Radiant Red's powers allow her to absorb the materials around her to make herself stronger. I'd describe her as being the heavy hitter or the tank of the Radiants. Number 3. Radiant Black. Whichever person we're talking about when it comes to what is under the mask, Radiant Black likely remains one of the most powerful characters in the Massiverse. Which I suppose shouldn't be surprising since he was one of the first ones to appear. And also, you know, Radiant Black is where it started and so it makes a lot of sense to me, and is the name of that first series. Initially, the power of Radiant Black was taken by Nathan Burnett, albeit with Nathan not really knowing at the time just what he was committing to. The Radiant appeared before Nathan and his friend Marshall late one night when they were walking home from the bar. In touching the Radiant, Nathan bonded with it and seemingly became the hero we later know as Radiant Black, a name that both Marshall and Nathan basically workshopped and kind of came up with together. Radiant Black has a slew of powers including super strength, flight, telekinesis, and more. And kind of like there's some black hole elements I feel like to Radiant Black's powers as well. Number 2. Existence / the Radiant? So I'm not really sure if this is the right name for me to be using here. As I said, this is a series where there is a lot of stuff. You kind of gotta like figure it out yourself, and there's little bits, and then we later get the full picture. The only being I've seen of the being's name that exists in existence, who Marshall talks to when he is hoping to save Nathan's life, was in the Radiant language, and I do not know how to read that language, let alone speak it. Although it is on my list of fictional languages to learn and become fluent in and master, right under Klingon and Krakoan, which I also have on my list. That being said, I could refer to this being as Existence, which is also the name of the place within I assume the Radiant, which both Marshall and Nathan can access, and seems to be pretty powerful. The being. And also the place, really. I suppose I could also just call it the Radiant because it might actually be the Radiant itself, although that kind of seems confusing because we already have Radiance and Radiant Black, so that might not be the right name. This giant being is a decider of life and death and possibly also the true power source of the Black Radiant. Its consciousness, or the guardian of it perhaps. Although like I said, things are not always super evident in the Massiveverse, but hey, that's what we love about it. It should also be noted that the aliens that Radiant Pink and Radiant Black ran into when they were teleporting away from 001 actually happened to resemble somewhat this being, which we also now know Radiant Black can kind of summon and use kind of like a mech. There's a lot to unpack. Number 1, Radiant Green? This character, as far as I know, doesn't have a name yet in the Massiveverse. We get a glimpse of them in the Supermassive event when all 3 heroes who appear there receive a vision of their own dark future. Radiant Black's vision allows him to see a potential future where the world is basically being decimated as an alien invasion of what appears to be Radiant mechs arrive. The same ones, as I was talking about earlier, that Radiant Pink and Black ran into when teleporting away from 001 and were in outer space. The invasion seems to be led by a glowing green being, who for now I'm gonna refer to as Radiant Green, even though it doesn't quite resemble a Radiant, but also, I don't know, Radiant Green, it just feels right to me. Where is Radiant Green? Is there one? But possibly, of course, this is an entirely new entity, so just a reminder that my name might not be accurate because we don't know who this is yet. That's all the time we have for today. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope that you are enjoying reading Radiant Black and all of the amazing things that are in the Massiveverse as well. I'm Amanda, and I'll see you next time, but until then, you stay nerdy, YouTube. Bye!